Hi, welcome to Growing the Edge, the weekly show, the weekly live stream about the most defining issue of our age, which is transformation. This week's show is about the 21st century mindset and how to adopt it. And there's really not many rules of the show. There's just three. The first one is dress for radio. The second is don't be boring. And the third is always use the rule of three. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Mandy, who's going to introduce you to our guests, and we'll take it from there. Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you, Chris. Hi there, welcome. And my first guest that I'm welcoming to the show is Has Sadeghi, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Has.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Has is a relational alchemist, and he's had some amazing transformative breakthroughs with leadership and development. He's created and used many, many tools which help in vision and mastery. So Has, I don't want to kind of like say any more, because I think you'll be able to explain a lot better what you do, but I'm absolutely looking forward to listening to you.
Yeah, it's good to be here with everybody, and thank you very much, Chris, for bringing us all together. Oh, it says sensei. Beautiful. Very apt. And Mandy, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, essentially, I help leaders with breakthrough work, those that are stuck or are kind of looking for that up level, and help them through different scientific and other transformational tools. So I also work with teams and help them kind of unite and become stronger and optimize their synergy. So transformation is right up my alley, and I was excited when Chris said he's putting something like this together. So happy to be here and share space with everybody.
So do people, how do people receive you, you know, when they hear about what you do? This relational alchemist, oh my God, this wizard, who is he? What is it? How do they receive you?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I operate in different spectrums. So it depends on the frequency of the audience, obviously. I guess my legal background, the favorite answer from a lawyer is always it depends. So I would say I am on the edge of thought leadership in terms of what I'm bringing forth, because it does infuse some more indigenous natural traditions, more of the mystic arts, as well as, you know, the cutting edge of what we're seeing now with other thought leaders like Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden, for instance, that are really bringing forth the mixture and the integration of spirituality and science. So I would say it really depends. If the audience is more on the neophyte or newer to this type of work, I would say that oftentimes they're curious. And for me, practical impact is the key. I think Chris's woo-woo meter goes relatively low around me. I guess hopefully that's not a projection. And I would say that I'm looking to really show leaders and teams the practical impact. So at first, if they're new to the concepts, it may be a little curiouser and curiouser. And so I break it down in a more nuts and bolts kind of way and reverse engineer it. And really the goal for me is to translate this ancient wisdom and the scientific wisdom into ways that you can employ them in your life. So that for me is the key.
And have you ever had a situation where, you know, you've just been kind of like not received in the way that you would like to be received, and, you know, people kind of like shut the door on you, or, you know, shut you up? I mean, how do you deal with stuff like that? And has that happened?
Well, it's really hard to shut me up. So I would say there are futile attempts at doing so. There is some resistance that I oftentimes face, and I do the best I can, and it's been part of my own transformational journey and the inner work not to personalize it. I would say there's a couple of different fragments. You know, in society, we have stigma around spirituality, and it oftentimes can be at odds with faith-based practices. So I would say sometimes I trigger faith-based orientation. And then I would say the other aspect of it is because so many people are struggling. I think the analogy I give is the other facet is that I bring up a lot. You know, I do a lot of really deep, really potent work, and very gifted at it. So I would say the other facet of the triggering or things that come up is some people are so deep or mired in it and the stuckness, that it does bring up like almost an overwhelm. And so it does require some finessing and kind of guiding them through that processing.
And what would you say, Has, in today's world, in today's leadership, how should leaders be sort of like tuning their mindset?
Yeah. So as to the topic today, it's an interesting one. I have been toying with the word mind a lot lately, and I like the quote. So I actually, to start off, I'm going to throw a curveball for the audience. I think the mindset that we need to have is no mindset. What I mean by that is there's a quote by Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt psychology, which is lose your mind to find your senses. And I think because I personally, from my own personal journey, had so much of a mind dominance, and I spent so much time trying to understand life and get caught in that understanding or those loops, that I think for the audience, my actual advice that I'd like to offer for everybody to consider is it's a journey to the heart. And for me, I think that really what we're talking about is moving forward with the right heartscape, not mindscape. And being able to, what I mean by that is being able to attune to our heart and embody our awareness and bring our focus into our interoception. And as to what heartscape, quote unquote, I would say we require moving forward, then I would conjure the words of Master Bruce Lee, which was be like water. I think for me, after taking that journey to my heart, in terms of transformation, I then shifted to the fluidity, being fluid, not rigid. Again, that mind state can put us in a rigidity. So if you get into the heart, the first step for me is finding that fluidity like water. The second was the formlessness of water, right? So again, I use this as an analogy, not having that rigidity, being fluid and dissolving as much of these beliefs and constructs. Again, dissolving the mind, losing the mind, getting into the body, getting into the other senses that we have, and then being present. Water doesn't sit there and question, am I water today? Oh, is there a rock I'm going to go around? Oh my God. Water flows. Water simply is. Water is present. And so I that's what I'd like to start off by offering for the audience, is that our way forward is by actually stepping out of the mind into the heart. And then secondly is allowing for stillness. I think we're too much of a go, go, go society. And for me, growth came out of stillness. And that was contrary to everything I was conditioned to believe. I believed that I had to do in order to change. And I realized this, to Chris's point in the Taoist tradition, I'm very syncretic, that nothingness, right? When we slow down and we allow that, then actually creation can spark. So step into your heart, be like water, and allow for some stillness to move forward.
That's wonderful, yeah.
And actually, Has, that reminds us, there's a good segue into just a recap of last week's show, where David Dibble was talking about, creating this receptive energy that's more of a compassionate pull rather than an achievement push.
I love that. And to really quickly add on that, I would say that was what I was doing. I used to be a jerk and didn't know it because I was so achieve push oriented. So what we're talking about is from a neuroscientific, neurobiology perspective, when you get into your heart, then to mirror what you said, you get into coherent state. So then your actual electromagnetics are in a very more palatable, more harmonic way. So it goes to your point. So I like that. Thank you for adding that.
I went to a conference actually last week on agile transformation, and there was an Australian guy who was helping the agile transformation of Lloyds Bank here in the UK. And he described himself, and you'll have to excuse the bleep, but basically as a reformed arsehole. And it sort of reminded me a little bit of, of some of the, Gandhi type of quotes around, we have to start with ourselves. How can I transform? How can I teach other people to transform unless I have firsthand experience of doing it within myself?
Yeah, and that's the case, because I see it now, and the science is matching it, that, the energy flows through us, and as leaders, then it extends outwards into our ecosystem. So everything we create is an energetic extension of us. So if we have incongruences, if we have things we haven't looked at, then what's going to happen is that's going to filter in and become projected outwards into the ecosystem. And so the leaders I work with, if they're sick, they have a sick culture. Why? Because then we share a morphogenic field. So I think that some of these great leaders, you know, the last century, that's what they were saying. There was a lot of ontological wisdom encased in something as simple as be the change. It's be that vibrational change. So thank you, Chris. Another brilliant add-on.
So Andreas, do we have anything from the chat?
Wow, we have actually.
Oh, you're muted, Andreas. You're muted.
So yeah, we already have some comments, and actually, as David commented about lose your mind to find your senses into the hardscape. So that's he's resonating with you, Has, on this comment. Yeah, for sure. And enjoying the reframing to the hardscape. There's a comment from Alex. No.
Oh, there is. There's one from Alex. Do you need?
Yeah.
Or can we have an example?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of an example for how to do it, I guess would be the way I would answer that. And a lot of different practices are out there. For me, I keep it simple. You know, for beginners, put your hand on your heart on a very mind-body practice. Close your eyes if you can, and really see if you can draw your awareness into your hand and your breath through your heart. So a lot of it takes practice, and it's a subtlety. So some people get frustrated, like, oh, I'm not feeling anything. What are you talking about? I keep thinking. Well, it takes like a line in the sand. You have to regroove it, and you can't, you know, I'm 36 when I started this practice 2-3 years ago. It was very hard. There's a lot of mind chatter, right? There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of dissonant energy around us. There's chaos more than ever now with the transformative shifts that the collective's going through. So keep it simple. Keep your hand on your heart, close your eyes, and see how you can draw your awareness into your hand and your breath into your heart. Start there. Keep it simple. Do that 5-10 minutes a day, and do the best you can. Secondly, to feel. Notice what's coming up in your body. Notice what the sensations are, and actually take the time to give them a voice. I'm feeling this sense, and if you can't identify or define the feeling, what are you feeling in your body? Oh, I feel a little bit of a tingly sensation over here. Start with something, because a lot of us, and I was very, very numb, very desensitized. We've lost some of our basic human senses. We've been desensitized, and it's a result, a byproduct of industrialization. That's as simple as that. It's part of our human evolution. And so practice refeeling, you know, and it's going to take practice. So hand on heart, come down, breathe through the heart, feel into your hand, and start to feel what's coming up for you.
And also, just on that note of refeeling, what, you know, we should also then accept the if somebody is feeling angry, because, you know, people are not always going to be happy, peaceful. You know, people are going to be angry and upset as well. So almost like, you know, how can you kind of accept it, and, you know, how can you then have the mindset to deal with it?
Yeah, it's a good, I mean, again, back to the water analogy, right? So the obstacle will present itself. So in this instance, this person's anger, and the water doesn't personalize it and doesn't go, this is about me, I suck, you know, or man, the water simply then secondly, fluidly moves around it, you know, and there's an acceptance implied in that analogy, as you draw forth very astutely, Mandy. And that's the key, is we have to start by accepting and allowing within ourselves, which then gives us, you know, tolerance or compassion, right? That's how we develop that muscle for then when other people bring that up. And Rumi's poem, The Guest House, for those that haven't heard it, is what I oftentimes go back to, is every day there's a new arrival in our human experience. Allow, welcome them all, and in that way, extend that to others, is what I sense you're drawing out, Mandy.
So Has, so just Mandy, is there anybody else like to come in at this point?
Let me.
So there's a question from Susan. She states, start where we are. What about teams that don't want to change themselves? Just change the organization? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
I don't want, let me pass the mic off to somebody else. I can come back to that question. I've been talking for a while.
Yeah, anybody else want to come in? Who's
can I pick? Can we do it like popcorn?
Yeah.
Find somebody else in the class.
Yeah.
Find somebody else in the class.
So I think what's interesting about what you're saying, Has, is that we're seeing a real change in organisations in adopting people's skills and leadership more into self-awareness, much more into state management, much more into being able to say no with our bodies, hearts and minds, rather than just tactically training people in leadership skills that really don't hold any resonance, but also more importantly than that, doesn't create that personal change.
Yeah.
And so often when I go into organisations and people are struggling with the change, they feel it's because it's being done to them as opposed to with them, and that they're informed of it. And so quite often when I'm doing change management exercises, it's really about starting with people at that starting point of their own heart, body and mind and their own self-awareness. And then as we establish that, we then align that with the purpose of the organisation and the purpose of the change. And that enables them to move forward that initial resistance that we all have to change because we don't understand our place within it.
Right, I'm going to introduce our next guest, if that's okay. And our next guest is, if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, please let me know. It's Christina Dreiser.
Christina Dreiser, but for the moment, let's go with it.
Sorry, Christina. So, Christina is,
Christina, Mandy, Christina.
Christina. Okay, Christina. So Christina is the author of Grace and the Wind, Tidal, Lunar and Circadian Rhythms. She's also a regular presenter at Carl Jung Society. She's also a constellation facilitator and a trend forecaster, and has also appeared on TEDx. Wow, I'm just blown away. Christina, can you please introduce yourself? Please introduce yourself to the world.
I often say like I was an ex-futurist, and now I describe myself as an archetypal consultant. I moved, I guess, from the patterns of what I saw in economics or on the street to really the patterns of us, and the patterns of us as mythological creatures. And I just want to follow a few things that Has just said then, that, yeah, how do we explore this word mindset and to include like the thinking and the feeling and the willing functions. And I'm not going to get the words exactly quite right here, but Jung said something like, it was the essence of it is that the hands will often solve a problem that the mind has struggled with in vain. Mm-hmm. And I think that also links to what he was also saying in regards to how do we value silence as much as we value noise? And also when we look at this issue of mindset, how do we, we're very Cartesian, in our mindset, in that I think, therefore I am. And I feel that where we're moving to is I sense, therefore I am. And actually, how can we actually look at not just like the 5 physical senses? Some people, there's 12, there's millions of ways we can, a taxonomy of them almost in a way, but almost can intuition be the first sense and not the 6th? And so just a few things I just wanted to begin to kick off the conversation was in this liminal state that we find ourselves in, can we actually turn to the universal stories that put us in touch with the sacred dimensions of life that are inherent within us? So stories that can hold us at deeper levels of truth, of wisdom, and of power. And there's many unseen influences, invisible forces that have an impact on us, and myth is one of them, because they're always shaping us, our myths, our personal myths, our collective ones, but they also are in a way the inner chronicles of who we are, and they require a true being with them, like the beauty, the nobility, the grace, the majesty. It's a bit like Has was saying, it's not the left brain certainty of the answer. It's can I lose myself in the mystery and the being with, the accompanying and the accompaniment that's required, especially in organizations at the moment. And so as the writer Goethe said, he who cannot draw on 3,000 years is living hand to mouth. And often we can't go into that expansiveness when we just have that linear left brain terminology of what mindset is. So I think there's something in us that instinctively responds to the archetypal imagery and myths and the need to connect to the deeper archetypal patterns. And because myths can really provide a larger container for our experiences. And I guess what I wanted to bring to the call tonight was The phoenix as a myth of our times, the mythological bird that cyclically regenerates and is born again. How can we rise from the ashes? And how can we cultivate a consciousness that sees life in mythic terms?
So, Christina, do you mind, Mandy, if I just... So yeah, that really resonates. One thing that I find interesting is it's almost like I've stopped reading modern books, because it's not like they're all not so good, but the older ones, the older they are, the more I seem to get out of them, which is why I sometimes joked in maybe one of the posts I put out about this event, Welcome to the Past Future. And I'm kind of playing a little bit, but I think that's real. We're going, basically, it is back to, we're Marty McFly, aren't we? We're going back. We're going back to, our future is about going back to our past.
Well, I think ancient future, future ancient.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And can anybody else come in and ask questions or join the conversation on our panel? Or have we got any questions?
Okay, Christina. So the myths that we delve into, are these only? Are we to think of them? How do you think of it? Do you think of it as a true believer, so to speak, as if these things are, quote, somehow real? I mean, I myself tend to be a true believer, and so I'm really believing in these various myths, as opposed to just thinking, well, here's a nice little metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, there's that saying that says, like, myths never were, but always are. And I think that for me, it's always that lens of, if I sometimes feel like myself, I'm struggling with something, it's like the world can easily collapse in on me. But if I can also connect and perceive myself into Odysseus on a long, arduous journey, and also that almost, I can connect to something bigger than myself. The universal and the mythic meets with the personal. And in that, I can find great comfort. And I think that there's some instances where the myth and the person is the one same thing. And while other times I do believe it's almost, in a sense, it's an aspect of myself that I haven't met yet.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, did you want to?
Yeah, I've been itching to say so much.
I can tell, yeah.
No, like, I think it's really important with everything. Like, the first step to really stepping out and finding your own mindset, I've found, has been trying to, like, nail down how you figure out what's true for yourself before you even go out there. And when it goes back to looking at mythology, for me, it's the ontology of it and saying, okay, what metaphysical links can we draw between the two realms, kind of? And say, we know the story. And for me, I love the story. Like, when you start talking about history, I read, like, the Iliad every time I can't go to bed. Like, I just put it, I have the audiobook and I just slam it on and I just listen. And for real leaders, honestly, I've had to go back to history, because that's where you see people who are forced to be leaders, not people who wanted to be leaders.
Yeah.
I've just posted a comment. Sorry.
That's very powerful, Ben.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Very, very powerful.
So my post in the chat is, epistemologists, the ontology is coming for you.
But I think also one thing the myths can give us is if we look at how do we have new frames of growth. Many of the myths are concerned with the seasons. And so if we only have linear growth, it's everything that we've been speaking about. You can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. But many of these myths are concerned with the death and the rebirth cycle. The flux, there's the constant change, it's not continuously static. And so I think that they allow us to, when we're in fallow periods or barren periods, they allow us to rest into them. We know that eventually they may be fruitful, but for the moment we're infertile in them. And there's some comfort that we can gain from actually this seasonal cyclical wisdom. It really, really can comfort us as much as star wisdom and earth wisdom and indigenous wisdom can too.
Okay.
One thing that came up for me, and it's kind of a dovetail of Chris's point and Christina's point, is this notion of, I like how you phrased it, is like losing yourself in the mystery. And for me, I found, early on, because I was so mind oriented, that on a practical level, and kind of to Ben's point as well, kind of mixed in, is that I hadn't gone ontologically within, and I was scared of the mystery. And to Chris's point, if we go to where we've already been, and we're seeking answers, and a lot of people listening right now are probably seeking answers, right? How do I move forward? And to Christina's point, it wasn't until I let go of the fear of losing myself in the mystery and going into that nothingness that I found the answers that I was seeking. So in a lot of ways, it's taking what we've already known or the past and then embracing the mystery of the future and meshing them together, unifying the two, not one or the other, both together.
And I think many people have been speaking, how do we, what's that F. Scott Fitzgerald quote, the sign of intelligence is being able to hold two opposing viewpoints in the mind at the same time. That's no longer intelligence, that's every day, right? Yesterday, right? We're just like behind that. So how do we move out of the either or to the both and especially if we look at, say, these underworld mythologies, it's not either the upper or the underworld, it's both the upper and the underworld simultaneously. So we always are met with, the challenge as much as the grace, the brutality of this experience that we're all going through with COVID, as much as the moments of beauty that it's offered to us too. So I think holding that both and is a really crucial part of mindset, whatever the new word, we're going to heartscape, whatever we're going to be using.
So Christina, the phrase the full word phrase I used for that is imagine everything is true.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, back to mindset, that's huge, because for a lot of people that's contradictory or paradoxical, and that is the very nature of our existence. We have to make peace with a mindset that embraces paradoxes.
Yeah. Onto that, I think, because as soon as you shut down something before even reading it, you're not thinking for yourself.
Yeah.
Someone made the decision for you.
I like that. Can you elaborate on that, Ben? I like that. Can you elaborate on that? There's a lot in that.
Yeah, no, there is. It's back to I guess what you believe to be true and why it is true for you. And it's like, if you shut something at the door because it came in and it was too mystical for you or too woo for you, it's like, in that there is a programming there that you made a decision preemptively before even really thinking about it for yourself. So it's where did that come from, and what stopped you from even facilitating the conversation?
So,
that would be fear, right? Fear.
Yeah. It's who said every ism causes a schism. Bruce, actually, it's Bob Marley.
Could I just chip in on your question, Chris? Yes, it was just, I think it was a really profound question, actually. And as far as I remember from the theoretical physicist Michio Kaku, he at some point said that everything that is ever invented is first invented in the mind. So that's why he's actually looking to science fiction to get a grasp of the future. And I think that says quite a lot. So you first have to invent it in the mind, right?
Absolutely.
In order to create it. And then we go into quantum physics and so forth. But I'll just leave it for you to elaborate on it if you want.
If just to throw some petrol on the bonfire, I don't believe that at all. I believe nothing is invented.
Oh, it's all remembered. Remembered.
It's already there. Yeah, it's already there. What we're doing is we're basically photocopying things that are already and sticking it on our bedroom wall.
The woo meter.
I've got to say the woo meter is really for me.
It's for me too.
No, to that point, it's really hard when you think about it to actually come up with something that's never been done before. So it's where did all of this come from in the very beginning then?
Yeah.
So I'm going to now move us along, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker guest, and he is Afi Khan. And one of the things that really kind of struck out for me with Afi Khan was he's a leader born out of chaos. I believe life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain. And I thought that was beautiful, living every day with that mantra, no matter what happens, and keep moving forward. So Afi, he finds people a match for their purpose. He has a very high reputation in recruitment. He's a family man, and he's here as a guest. Welcome, Afi.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So yeah, I'm really pleased to be here. I guess my view here comes from a behavioral economy and game theory perspective. I've faced a lot of chaos as a child growing up and had to adapt to it, and I normally look at those things in a way that how humans tend to either seek order or seek chaos, and generally struggle with finding the chemistry and the balance between the yin and the yang. And how do we embrace that paradox? I love the idea of being like water from Hass, and also what Christina just said about the idea that the ability to be able to hold two contradictory thoughts in your mind is just the new normal now. And that really led me down some very interesting rabbit holes with fragility, anti-fragility, with black swans, and with understanding VUCA. And so for me, the way I look at it is the dichotomies that we try to hold on to in our life that give us comfort. Order that makes us feel like we belong, but also at the same time can imprison us. And the ability to embrace two opposing forces between order and chaos. And I look at that from not just from a structural perspective in real life in terms of building businesses. I create companies out of the ether. And they, to Chris's point, they already exist. I just find them. And then I find people and develop them to become a different version of themselves. So this applies to not just our outward reality, but also our within. We go through different journeys. We look at things from either we're dependent or we're independent. And I look at things from a higher perspective about interdependence. And so for me, the one thing that I'd like to talk about today is, and I've actually drawn it out because I think I can use some aids because I think that helps get things out. Is we either see ourselves as fragile. So, and I've just drawn fragility, and fragility gives us a sense of liberation because we're unassuming, we're small, we don't have big burdens, but we're also, as chaos can hit us, we can crumble quite easily. And then you've got our dichotomies at the moment are fragile or robust. And you've got big corporations, hierarchies, rigid, command and control, and they have the illusion of being strong, right? And as we embrace the dichotomy between order and chaos, we try to embrace something called anti-fragility. And it's those things that actually benefit from chaos, those things that create order but embrace chaos at the very same time. And being able to open that mind up to that idea, just 3 days ago when we all met, I started to think about this, and even in those 3 days, something came at me. So originally, for the last 2.5 years, I've been explaining anti-fragility to people like this: that you have lines that lead you down a certain path, but have room for chaos to come in between them, intertwining, right? And then I went, when I met with you guys 3 days ago, and I said, no, that's incomplete because one end is not communicating with the other end. So then I looked at it from a VUCA perspective. I said, well, let's look at this pandemic. Let's look at where we are right now, right? And this pandemic is just a string of chaos events that define us. And the theory goes that black swan events actually define the steps we take in our life. The order is an illusion. The black swan events are low probability, high impact events. So within a VUCA world, which is a world view that accepts and embraces volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity as a normality, instead of seeking a smaller universe so you can feel a sense of comfort, belonging, and certainty, you embrace the volatility of VUCA, right? And then I drew this, and I thought, well, now all these orderly circles meet up, but then that was incomplete. And here's what dawned on me when I woke up this morning, that actually an anti-fragile VUCA reality looks like this.
Yeah. Okay. I need to make a reading, Andy. Effie, keep it on the screen. Let's see.
Right.
Yeah, you're all right. Carry on.
Right. Who's with me? Who's with me?
Yeah.
Hands up. Right. And there we go. And look at that.
There we are.
I'm feeling left out. I don't have my stories. So yeah.
And that is.
I think it would be great, Effie, if you could explain it for the viewers. What do you mean by it?
Well, okay. What it is order is chaos folding back on itself, strengthening order. Order is not an opposition to chaos. Order is chaos. It lives together. It feeds itself. And we as a natural crisis doesn't weaken humanity. It strengthens it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The universe falls back on itself to strengthen itself under chaos and creates order out of it. Right.
Yeah.
An anti-fragile view in a VUCA reality looks like that. And for me, it was mind-blowing, because had I gone into thinking, predetermining a mindset of what I want that to look like, that idea wouldn't have come from the meeting we had 3 days ago.
Yeah. And that's because the universe is constantly turning itself inside out. So that's the reality. I wouldn't mind just throwing in a bit of just to like take the woo down a notch. Netflix use anti-fragility, and they have a tool called Chaos. The Simian Army, one of their tools is called Chaos Monkey. That brings down servers in their data centers, or even whole data centers, randomly as part of their production platform. And look how well they're doing. Well, I don't know now, but I'm assuming they're doing brilliantly under COVID, aren't they? But the deal is that Reid Hoffman has really embraced that, and it's actually they've open sourced it, so anybody can use Chaos Monkey to do exactly the same thing. And if you look at how the cloud computing platforms are put together, and maybe on another show we'll talk about that sort of geeky stuff. It's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anti-fragility is very applicable in business, in the way we live our lives as individuals. It's like water. It's like what Has was saying, is water can freeze and be rigid when it needs to be, or when it's boiled, it can turn into steam, evaporate, and move somewhere else. When it needs to flow down, it can flow down. When it needs to rain onto the ground, it can do that. Water is the best anti-fragile element we can look at, and that we can reflect on that to see how it applies to a lot of things.
It's the adaptability. I love the toroid. That was brilliant.
I'm just gonna jump in to ask Andreas if we've got any questions. And Andreas, just if you don't know me quite so well, I only ask questions I already know the answer to.
Right. That's sensible. Okay, so embracing the chaos here. Martin Werfe is asking, so quote, chaos is order yet undeciphered. Deciphered. Yeah.
Say that again. Sorry, Andreas.
Yeah, say that again.
So chaos is order yet undeciphered.
Undeciphered.
Undeciphered. Yes.
Yeah. So I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. It's our understanding and our perceptions that define what is order and what is chaos. And this is why when we desire order, we are limiting ourselves. So we don't embrace the chaos. When we only desire chaos, then we can't make sense of that, and we can't actually create any order for ourselves for a sense of belonging. For example, in my opinion, a lot of the mythology that follows the way we used to live our lives in the past was a form of anthropomorphosis, and that is making sense. But that making sense of that chaos allowed us to feel a collection of people that can be brought together and achieve things. We can build temples, we can build societies, we can build communities. So if we accept order only, we limit ourselves. If we accept chaos only, we limit ourselves. We have to accept both those dualities in one go.
I like that. And then what I saw very thematic with the title of the show, so to speak, is when we embrace that VUCA and we go into that, unification state, we also grow the edge of our consciousness, right? We expand our consciousness out. So it's very thematic. I liked that popped up and said, what you're presenting also helps grow the edge of the consciousness and push it outwards.
So what you're saying, Afi, is that actually by having this anti-fragility, we're actually creating or having more opportunity?
Absolutely. I think that what we can create, if we control the controllables, but embrace chaos into it, accept chaos instead of trying to avoid it, which we do as human nature. We actively avoid it because we feel unsafe by it. But realizing that it's okay if your order has continuance, if it's powerful, it was going to keep continuing, then it can be strengthened by chaos, not weakened by it. But human nature causes us to want to avoid chaos from within our order so we can feel safe. And I think
so Andreas, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do.
Oh, can I just comment on that?
Oh, okay, Christina.
There's a difference between self-generated chaos versus chaos that births universes. And the left brain can never get ahead of that latter chaos. But there is a self-generated chaos where I could keep my apartment a mess because I know how to bring it into order because it's within my confined parameter. So I think it's just to know that there's different types of chaoses that we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question from Susan again. So she's asking what structures are keeping the rigidity in place?
I wouldn't say what structures. I would say trauma is one aspect of the collective consciousness that's keeping rigidity in place, which goes to Afi's point that, the trauma causes the fear from a human experience perspective on a very practical level. And that is furthering the rigidity. So that's my response to Susan's question.
For me, the answer to that question will be the not identification of constructs that are invented by humans, confused humans that created concepts that fragments what is unified. And with those constructs, they create structures like bureaucracy and politics without understanding polish. That polish is about increasing your life force, not telling you what to do. So basically, rigidity and stopping and confronting evolution and getting in what people know is because humanity is trapped in constructs that people don't challenge and look at them straight and say, okay, this word describes something that doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to stop using it because
I'm going to officially introduce Eva Pascual. Is that how you say your name, Eva?
Eva.
Eva.
Yeah, you can call me as you like. It's up to you guys how you call me. I didn't
say it
choose my
again.
name.
Say it.
Some people call me Eva, Eva, like Wally, or Eva. But as I say, I was I realized that I was here before my name, so you can call me as you like. And
so just a very quick introduction.
Really?
Eva is she writes about standard based in vibrational frequencies, which is completely just beyond me what that is. But she also cares about nature, educational programs, crisis management. Her background is in designer and production organizations with medicine studies, and that's just like a tiny little glimpse of Eva's background. It's she's created transcendental references of unified paradigm gathering, mathematics, physics, mindfulness. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So, Eva, please tell us what you do and how can this help us with mindset?
For not getting lost in confusion, I will invite everyone to check out facts and put creativity in service of facts. For not getting lost in history or getting lost in dogmas or in systems that are written by someone else that is not your own perceptive system. So as I said, I'm a human being doing her best to erase domestication, to recover all the senses and skills that an animal has to perceive the energetic fields that we are immersed in. So the fact is, every one of you were on Earth before you got a name. So no one of you is your name. You were here before, and you earned your life by passing through a perfecting golden mean hole that is the vagina of a woman that gave you birth. Those are facts. So life has shapes and structures that makes you life bloom. And by investigating facts, you can act more aware of what is happening for real, and that allows more intelligence to thrive through you. So I challenged all the known when I was a kid, and they diagnosed me something that I couldn't treat. So I have to learn a lot of things to heal my own self. First of all, detoxicating my own feeding, my nourishment, and learning how the biochemistry in the body can kill you if you're not aware how you nurture yourself properly. And avoiding confused human food, you maintain your immune system and your happiness because you understand that food decomposes differently, so it depends on what you eat. You will be higher frequency or lower frequency. You eat putrefaction, you will have to have an effort to have energy. If you eat fermentation, that is fruit, you will be a higher, more happier human. So I started exploring physics and ways of relating with humans because I didn't really understood the level of violence they allow around themselves and the level of drama. So since I was really young, I challenged everything, like concepts like water, how we keep teaching kids the hydrological map. So we perpetuate confusion in our perceptive system, teaching rivers, seas, oceans, and rain a part of the cloud, the steam a part of the fog, and all that is hallucinations about fragmentation. So when you realize that you've been trained and domesticated with concepts that doesn't exist about water that allows you to perpetuate toxicity in the water that you're going to drink afterwards, then you start realizing that you can't really trust the authorities or the representatives because they are really confused. So we decided to explore deeper and deeper until I found out that I was having the possibility or the capacity as a producer and designer of spaces and entertainment and events and campaigns and tours and things like that, that I was capable to visualize crystal clear everything in front of me and reverse engineer the structure of development to produce really fast. And someone invited me to study NLP because they told me that that capacity was NLP. But after exploring NLP and meeting Mr. John Grinder, he told me, no, what you saw is the hardware. We download the software, but what you see is the hardware. So you get out of whatever you do, and John Grinder grabbed my shoulder and say, I don't know what you do, but you stop it and you map out everything you found out. So I map out the structure of the gears of thinking, that is where people think, where the mindset are projected, and how memory that is color-coded in 5 hard disks, how memory has all your knowledge and how your knowledge is interfering in the state of presence that allows you to download information from the source or to perceive reality interconnected as it is. And
So Ava, do you have a link you could share in the chat?
Oh yes, you can write down
for our viewers.
evolution.net.
Right.
And that will take you, and I would suggest you to check out the Love is Law website, where I've been doing visual references in virtual reality for people to see videos of how the gears of thinking works, how water is unified, how humans should stop fossil fuel extraction, because when you understand unification, you'll see that Earth is a stone that is inside of water, that is because water is all until the atmosphere altogether, and that stone has fire inside, and that fire is covered by a black, thick substance that is fuel, that is black and thick because it absorbs the heat of the fire in the center. It's because humans are schizophrenic about hallucinations about separation, they allow the fuel to get extracted and burn out, and they then talk about climate change when they don't even look at Earth as it is, that is a spherical planet immersed of water. And the point is that if we are life, and we are not our names, we are not our families, our dogma, we are not our memory. That's a fact, because if you lose completely memory, you keep existing, and you will thrive with tenderness and bloom. And tenderness and kindness and care and compassion. And when you understand the gears of thinking, you understand how other people has another domestication that they throw in front of themselves, and they lose the love capacity because you lose awareness from the skin to the screen of thinking, because we think out of the head in holograms. And those thoughts are only frames of wholeness that contains all the possibilities. And the point is that I'm done listening to people saying, oh, this is woo, 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 woo. Just for you to know, the president, the director, the principal of the Oxford University of Physics told me in my face in a room that they know that what I'm talking about, the holographic paradigm, is discovered 13 or 15 years ago. But they don't have enough artists to make enough books to normalize the fact that we are immersed in a hologram. So I've been doing references with a lot of artists that understand light, or they are enlightened, or they understand light itself, to create visual references for people to think with what they know, but closer to truth, closer to understand that everything is vibration. We are immersed in a unified field of vibration, and nature has no black holes, no junk DNA. We just need to normalize negentropy. That negentropy is the formula of basically how golden mean creates everything. Negentropy is a vortex, a toroid, that like a cone that goes inside, and another one that goes outside. That is the connection in between the vortex, that this is a vortex. So the connection, you will see a cone going inside and the cone going outside. What is in the middle, people call it chaos. That is basically transformation. If you understand a little deep of physics, of how negentropy creates perception, creates colors, creates bliss, creates gravity. If you understand that there's people that can use those patterns, to create harmonizer buildings, harmonizer devices to restore health with vibration, harmonizer education, everything can be replicated in nature patterns, so we can create the fourth real industrial revolution, that is evolution based in frequencies as a standard. But first of all, identifying how we lose awareness from within, as that the brothers say, the presence allows you to perceive when your body expands, and in presence, that is memory out of the middle, allows you to see future, to download the never seen before, to understand that the source that made you when you were a kid inside your mother's water, that you were not worried about how to thrive, you were there just thriving because water take care of you. That creature is inside of water still, because it's water in the air. As you can see when you use your air conditioner, there's water in the air. If there's no water, you're dead. So if there's water everywhere, and water is designed to thrive you with good intention, goodwill, wish of blooming, then why not to use that as a currency? Why not to use heart coherence and life force blooming as a currency, as a legacy-driven corporation? Is your corporation making life force blooming, or is creating more toxicity because you still believe in rivers and in seas and oceans apart?
Sorry, Ava, I'm just wondering whether Caroline or Ben has got anything to add, because we haven't heard from them for a bit. And actually Sid as well. Sure.
Well, have we all talked yet? Am I the last one to talk, or Caroline?
Yeah, I think Sid and Caroline, you're the sort of last two I was going to introduce, but you know, we could just carry on if you like. It's okay.
Yeah, we could just sort of mushy meld it if we wanted to. We can make it up. So
yeah, we can.
Okay, so I see a question over here on the side about trauma, unresolved trauma inhibiting vibration. And yeah, because trauma hardens and causes withdrawal or density. And in order to maximize vibration, you have to be open and flowing. So that is my answer to this person down here in the corner. And also the thing about the torus flow, see, this is, by the way, is a slinky. It took me about 8 years to realize if you take a slinky and put it in a circle, you've got a perfect torus. I kept looking for toruses, and there they were.
Yeah.
So if you roll any part of the torus inward, the entire torus rolls. So it is a model, the slinky itself is a wonderful model of continual transformation. And the future comes down, here and now is right in the middle, and history comes out the bottom. And then it wraps back around in order to inform potential. So it's a continually growing and circulating force, by the way.
So Martin makes a good point, actually. Martin Murphy says, you need to meet people where they are and ask, so what?
One thing I love of the is that the kids understand that because you are immersed in this that is unified, whatever you think or do will impact, as she said, like whatever will impact the entire structure. So only by thinking bad stuff, you will shrink yourself inside the scenario. But if you wish good and you take care, then you will thrive just by wishing good, just by good intention. And that is measurable nowadays.
Eva, can I just say that I find what you said about life force being a currency such a powerful thing, and it's somehow the universe aligns these things, because I've long thought about, when I have time, I'm going to write a paper on a new economic system called valuism, which transcends all these current forms of socialism, communism, capitalism, and takes us into a new currency where we define the value we are able to extract from the world by the value we create for humankind. And
yes, let's add humankind and all life forms. Please don't leave any life form out of this.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean by just being in this conversation. I've just grown. Right.
The point is that, just for you to know and to add in the conversation, the people listen, this is not an idea. We are making it. We have the guys who develops applications based in hard coherence. So we can know if a representative is lying or not just by reading his voice. So be ready for the real fourth industrial evolution based on us reading your voice and knowing if you're lying or knowing if you're coherent and knowing if your message increase life force. Because they think that producing and like cameras and AI will control us. But the point is that if you take care of the developers and the producers and the creatures that are really in the bottom of society and doing stuff, and you tell them how love works, they work for love. They don't work for any toxic Darth Vader corporation anymore. So yeah, it's a fact. Like, you can write the paper. We have all the applications designed. We have a huge network of people. We are putting a big event together for next December, just to make people understand that life force is measurable, and you live and you thrive through it. So whatever you consume, whatever you design, has to have life force as a standard of measure.
And do you agree that life force is love? I mean, anger and hate is constrictive. Love is the life force blooming. Would you agree with that? Because I mean,
I think
simply throwing things into chaos isn't necessarily going to make them evolve. They could go bad, and I think that's what people fear. So it has to be embodied through love. That's the heart space then, right?
The heart space is order, is negentropy. It has 7 layers, and if you find something that matches and increase your life force, then you feel it, and your heart creates more coherence with that thing. The main point is that love is the ultimate force, and conflict is a perceptive error of separation created by people that don't control their memory, getting in the middle of the experience. So you perceive conflict. You have an opinion that say, oh, this is chaotic. This is just normally it's all about confused humans. Humans that perceive separated, they create more confusion. But animals and plants and all nature is in order because it's created by negentropy. That is the ultimate order that is golden mean. So taking that in education, art, policy making, and entertainment, you basically imprint with a new paradigm. No more New Age because it has 40 years of explanations in physics. It's old. It's 40 years old.
Yeah. So Ava, if you don't mind, just to build on that, going back to Martin's point as well, because some people might be getting a bit confused. I think what we're talking about is when we're using too much push and we should be using more pull. And once you start applying, because people can understand that, right? It's about enabling. It's about the parent giving the child a little bit of freedom and independence when they think, and actually, in a space that allows them to grow. It's a bit more about hands-off, servant leadership, all of these sorts of things that we've...
For me, no, I don't want to get confused. I'm talking about real presence that allows you to perceive the hydrogen inside yourself that increase. So you don't have to allow your kids to go in YouTube and see porn with 6 years old, for example. Be careful with that. Be like, let's make some freedom. No, it's about what you as a human makes you increase your hydrogen. You acknowledge the water within, and you, when you have ideas for decision making, resonance is the way of guiding. Resonance will allow you to know what is harmful and what is not without an adult confused around you to tell you what to do. And
and resonance is about going back to what John Bryan Hennessy said in last week's show. He was mentioning that resonance, anybody who's sung in a choir knows what resonance is about. Anybody
follow your goosebumps is the ultimate resonance. That's the hydrogen of the body going out totally.
Exactly. So basically what we're doing is I think maybe was it Haas mentioned we've been desensitized in our industrialized society to not know where the buzz is, and we need to rediscover that buzz, don't we?
We are here, and this is my last point, because when you think, you get out in the screen of thinking that is in front of you. You open holograms in wholeness with what you know, that is memory, that is in your back. This is the hardware of thinking. So you lose awareness from the skin to the screen. And when someone has a trauma, someone as a kid was not enough defended, you get in the screen, you put an image of yourself out there, and you live through the image. So you are not sensitive anymore. You don't feel nothing. But that's why it has tricks of feeling the body and feeling your heartbeat and your breathing and your sacrocranial rhythms and all that. It helps a lot because that forces you to get back within to your flesh, to recover your senses, and then not escaping the screen.
I love how that model is essentially how I see it is Socrates' allegory of the cave, right? And so for me, the desensitization is you identify. So here's your guy, you identify with the images on the screen that are essentially the hallucinations, right? And then you no longer are the observer. You're no longer present in your body. So then
we relate like this, and we should relate like this.
So what we probably need to do is move it on. I'm just wondering before we go on to Sid, just whether Caroline, you haven't spoken for a bit, you had any points on what Ava has mentioned or anything else really? Oh, you're on mute, Caroline.
Hi, sorry. I think what's really interesting about this evening is that we're talking about history, we're talking about VUCA, we're talking about embracing volatility, being more fluid, being more agile, being able to navigate, being able to be much more in touch with our vibrations and our sensitization rather than our thinking patterns. And I think what we're trying to achieve is to get back to some kind of organizational context in terms of what does that mean for the 21st century mindset? What do we need? What skills do we need? And I think part of that is there's a comment that's been made in the chat around what does it mean for diversity? What does that mean for storytelling? So we talk about stories in terms of mythology, but actually what about our inner dialogue and what we're hearing within ourselves every day and how those fears show up and how as leaders we're going to manage our way through all of this confusion. So as we develop our understanding and create more information for ourselves, how do we think and feel in duality at the same time to remove some of that inner dialogue and move forward as effective leaders into the 21st century, knowing that the skills that will be required today will be different as we progress. So that was my observation in terms of where we are.
That's brilliant. I love how you brought it back to a pragmatic level.
Yeah, I absolutely love it.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, how do we bring that into our current existence in organizations, in our daily lives, you know, with teenagers, with children, with adolescents? You know, how do we manage that work-life balance? You know, you know, a perspective of whatever is saying is great, but actually, in reality, you know, I'm a single mum. I've got to raise 3 kids. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to pay my bills. Oh, shit. Guess what? We had a flood. All of the houses have been flooded. The insurance companies are not going to pay for the fucking insurance of the buildings. So the point I'm making is that it's great. We need the frequency understanding and vibrational understanding, but we've got to bring it back to our reality. So, you know, I think somebody...
So Mandy, can I have a go from an organizational perspective?
Yes, please.
And I think someone else might be a bit more better on a personal level, but I've definitely trained on this across organizations. So if we embrace a VUCA reality, then we also embrace a VUCA prime reality. And VUCA prime is mapping yourself against a chaotic, fast-moving, rapidly changing environment with vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. And let me just touch on these things. So vision is a replacement for planning. Planning are an illusion that in a stable environment for a prolonged period of time give you some feedback that it works, but actually plans have no value. In a hyper-changing world, they're useless. But a vision allows you to set a direction of travel. And you can have a speed bump, your car can break down, you might have to take the bus, you might have to swim your way there, but you are able to channel that force in a certain direction. Understanding stops the egotistical need to be understood, to spend time speaking so you may convey your point to the point where you feel absolutely safe in that limitation. But actually, the Socratic method, as Has was talking about Socrates, is to ask why, to understand first, and then seek to be understood.
And I agree with all of what you just said, Afi, but I think from what Mandy's perspective is seen within organizations. So we're taught all of these models and we walk out of training rooms and we're told what to expect of ourselves and how to behave and how to perform. But I think for me, it comes back to Christina's point around intuition and actually trusting ourselves and feeling it and exploring it for ourselves. And absolutely getting to the point that you just made, we all get to that place, but it's how we get to that place, because pragmatically, what we're dealing with is different to what we've ever dealt with before. And we can't keep putting plasters on what that needs to look like, because we're doing that after it's happened. What we need to get to is where Christina's coming from, which is really around what our intuitive response is, what we're really allowing ourselves to feel from the inside and project out into that ecosystem, as Hassan said, which is really about what do we know from within about who we need to be tomorrow, and using that and trusting in that and believing in that and not being fearful of it in order that we can become better leaders, better people, better mothers, better fathers.
Exactly. So I'm just wondering, we should probably move on to Sid now.
Yes, let's move on to Sid. And Sid, you've got you have got so much experience, so many experiences in your life. I don't know where to start. I mean, you hold a PhD. You've served 4 years in the Air Force. You're a qualified Gestalt psychotherapist. You've done Jungian dream analysis. Please introduce yourself, because I'm struggling.
Well, don't feel in awe of me, because believe me, no one else does. I was a college teacher for a number of years, and I felt frustrated because, as I think someone else mentioned once upon a time, I actually feel more love of the knowledge and the truth than I do of my fellow humans. I often feel frustration with people, and I wish I were above that, but I'm not. However, when I quit teaching in a huff, I became an innkeeper. I went into the hospitality business, and for 8 years, I owned a very successful and glowingly reviewed bed and breakfast in Ashland, Oregon. And it was while I became a breakfast chef, a really good breakfast chef. And it was while I was preparing an endless series over 8 years of breakfast for 12 people every single morning that involved fruit salads. I discovered that all the fruit was Tauruses. I mean, the Tauruses came flowing over me as I was cooking, and it became the incubator for my own realization of the Taurus. And so what I discovered from that is that the whole flow of toroidal flow, and it was through apples and oranges and pumpkins and squash. They all have exactly the same shape if you look at them. So it was once I stopped trying to teach and simply did see the ball, move the ball kind of thing. I was plugged into a machine, which was my bed and breakfast. That was a 24-hour day kind of job where I didn't have my own will anymore. I was not volitionally doing anything. I was entirely there for the machine, so to speak. But it was a machine of hospitality. It was a machine of loving and welcoming all kinds of people with all kinds of peculiar needs. I only eat egg yolks. I never eat egg yolks. Cook kosher for me. It was like every breakfast had strange and unique requirements. And I realized that everybody was different. Every person at the table liked and disliked with a passion aspects of the food. But unlike my students, they all wanted to be there and they were all dying to dive in. They were happy to be there. Whereas the students always seemed very resistant, like, do we have to? Do we? Must we? And I got very tired of trying to push the boulder uphill. Whereas I really enjoyed being part of a machine that was providing love and acceptance to the people that flowed through my doors. I didn't go out to find them. They came to me.
So Sid,
yeah.
Go on, Chris.
I was going to say, some people in the audience online who are there are the most important people who are kind of the people not on the screen might be thinking it's like, if we could break it down for people. We've also talked about, kind of compassion and pull. We've talked about there's some crazy stuff you can do to understand that at a deeper level, but at a practical level, if somebody who has no knowledge of these things and is maybe even not interested or is even put off by them, which many people are, there are some simple things, aren't there? That basically what we're saying, I would say, is that physicists have discovered a little bit about the secret of compassion and love inadvertently in their work, and they've realized that if people are a little bit less egotistical, they can become better people, and most importantly, more effective employees and leaders.
Well, ego is in the way, because ego is just a set of hardened beliefs or meme bundles. I call them meme bundles. We each carry our meme bundle on our back, and how much my memes overlap with your memes generally is a reflection of how much we get along. And people whose memes don't overlap, they really dislike each other. And my guests, when they would book to stay with me, they would list all their little peculiarities. No feather pillows. I won't eat this. I won't eat that. And I'm like, oh, what a pain. What a pain. Oh my God. Are these people going to be a pain? But then they'd arrive at the door and it's a really sweet person. And we start chatting about their grandchildren. Suddenly I love them. And suddenly none of their demands are painful or a bother, because I accepted them by knowing them.
So Sid, I'm wondering, Christina, is what you think about this idea of compassion and how it plays out in the 21st century.
Yeah, and also linked with, I think, Carolyn's point earlier, is that we we need to be aware of the stories we tell to ourselves about ourselves.
Mhm.
And so then we can co-create the stories we tell about ourselves as human beings on planet Earth in this moment now. And I think within that, we have to look at how language colonizes the mind, you know, how our words create worlds, the images of which we're imprinting ourselves with as well. And I think it's also this, again, going back to Goethe, and I'm sorry if I'm not getting these lines exactly bang on right, but it was, Goethe said something like, only when you can trust yourself do you really start to live. And I think many of us are in an inner war within ourselves. And so when we don't have faith and trust in ourselves, how can we have faith and trust in others, in life? And I think that is, we can't then, we've all been around people where their very presence, they almost hug us in a way that we can't, we're so brittly and prickly in our own personality, we can't do it to ourselves. But there's something in that, their presence that just allows us, you know, in almost, and I think those people, they trust themselves, they've learned how to live. And when we're in the field of them, it almost, I'm allowed to be as I am. And in that permission, I think we can start having some of these heartfelt conversations.
Yeah.
Ava,
beautiful.
Yeah, lovely. Ava.
Can I say two things, because one of them is about what Ava was saying and Mandy's.
Yeah.
Like,
Is your name Ava?
No.
Yeah.
No. Can I say something really quick?
Of course.
Please go forward.
Well, really quickly, because one thing that was in the space that I wanted to touch upon, because here we were earlier talking about, you know, unifying two things, and then, you know, we're now talking about, well, let's not talk spiritual, let's talk practical. I want it to be known that we need to unify even in this space now as a group, that it's not spiritual separate from practical. We need to employ what Ava is talking about in order to get to where Christina is talking about, which ties to what Caroline's talking about, because when Christina says, trust yourself, I hear trust your intuition, which was Caroline's point. And to get to trusting our intuition, we need to employ the theories and concepts Ava is promulgating in order to get the practical results. So again, a more gestalt or holistic framework.
Yeah, so, Ava, did you want to come in?
I got
Thank you. First of all, I love, as a producer, I love efficiency and I love joy. I love to create joy in the teams, because then you can do impossible faster. So yes, let's talk practical stuff. Anyone who has a company out there, check out nanoresonance.com. Check out Blue Bosom. Check out people that has filters to implement you an amazing marketing campaign to restore water, purity, and fractality with whatever you do in your companies. You use water. Put those filters on water and promote that. Hey, I realize I have a perceptive error of separation in water, but because I feel it right now, I want to leave legacy, so I installed this filter that can be really cheap to do it. And now your products are done with fractal pure water. And now I can get the water out of the stream because I respect you and I love you as a client and as a user and as a supplier. So I'm talking about practical stuff. If you understand Earth as a spherical planet, you go with any authority or representative and you have your authority and your sovereignty as a human from Earth planet to say, this is not right. You are not right. You can be the authority because someone was the author of norms, but if he was confused, fuck that shit, and excuse the word if it's someone young.
Mandy's already said fuck.
Sorry, I already swore.
I agree. If someone confused, if an adult, and this is a message for all the young people out there, stop reading the books that they told you in the school. They are all written by confused humans. Check out Dan Winter work. Check out the people who understand frequencies as a standard and update yourselves, because you can't wait for the leaders of physics to update, because they are waiting for themselves to retire. Yeah. For other ones, this is what the principal told me, for other ones to come and change all the book. We need a lot of artists to create visual references to change how reality is described. Come on, guys. Yes, we really need an update and act with facts. A spherical planet has no borders. So, water circle has no friends, and human family is the entire family. If you acknowledge that, you eradicate the UN SDGs straightforward. because they are all based in illusory fragmentation.
Yeah, perfect. So we've got about 12 minutes left, and we need to do a quick wrap. So I'm gonna kind of try and wing it for a bit with Sid, because I think you had a few more points to make, and then I'm going to try and bring in Caroline and Ben, and maybe do a little bit of a kind of a close, if that's all right. And Andreas, actually. Andreas, in fact, did you have any reactions? You're smiling, so you're probably chatting with your girlfriend or something.
No, she's with the baby, hopefully. So I already have quite a lot of aha moments, and I don't expect myself to be the only one in the audience of the viewers. So there's a lot of stuff to comprehend, I guess. But I guess the ongoing theme, as I see it, is really what Has said about about the water flowing and losing yourself and lose your mind and enter the heart space. What I find really interesting, also speaking of that, is actually maybe even going beyond the senses, or at least not looking on the outer world, but going into the inner world, which is really transcending your identity, your ego, and tapping into being conscious instead of compulsion, and really just being present as a person. So that's kind of the essence what I got from now.
So
yeah,
let me say
there's
that
more to it, obviously.
the reason I keep coming back to love is because it is a central force. Well, it's the central force, in my opinion, the central positive force. And it's something we can all agree on. I mean, it's the center of the donut. We have to be able to look and share a central force. And when we're standing in ego instead, we're separated. But when we focus on the middle together, then we can together build the better for all. Were you going to ask me something like that, Chris?
I'm multitasking, trying not to close the screen down by mistake. So,
All right.
See, for
Yeah.
me, see, you are absolutely right. The point is that to identify how humans lose love and how humans lose inner peace. So the main reason we humans lose love and inner peace is because memory gets in the middle of perception. So because you react instead of acting with what happens, because if you think about it, you are out of your body, so you are not love anymore. You lose inner peace. You can't create social peace, neither environmental restoration. If you have inner perception, you don't allow your memory or no one's memory to get in the middle of the relationship, so you create peace around you, and you are perceived for real nature without construct in the middle, so you restore it with love. You don't lose love capacity, that is your source.
Yeah. So, Caroline, did you have a comment?
I think when people ask me why I become a trusted advisor, the only reason I become a trusted advisor is not because I know everything, not that I have a unique perception, because as you mentioned, Chris, earlier, nothing was invented, it's all known, but because of love. It's because I genuinely care about every assignment, every person, every activity, every outcome. And I think with that, if we work collectively and holistically, then we can drive that outcome. And just to add to your points earlier about this 3-stage process that you talked about, Has, it is a 3-stage process if you look at it like that. But to speak from a corporate organisation's perspective, the reality is people need to bring themselves to work. They need to do some of that work themselves. They need to go on that journey that you're talking about, Ava, by themselves. They then need to bring that person as a whole and be brave and show courage and share and be transparent and open. And then the organisation can then intercept that and do something with it. There's too much pressure on organisations to do everything for people, and they can't. People have to.
Yeah, so there's about seven minutes left. I'm going to attempt to do a close and a synthesis. So there's a few other topics that I wouldn't mind mentioning, just like bringing in, and there's some things that I have some practical experience of, in an organizational context. Hierarchies, in terms of, the 21st century and how to cultivate mindset and how to cultivate it. Well, what we need to understand is that actually hierarchies don't really work when there's too much chaos. You really need to be moving from hierarchies to networks. In fact, why don't I'm going to slap up the slides. Why not? Okay, to hell with it. So let's have a look. So first of all, let's have a look at one of the 20th century things that occurs, and that is feedback. So let's give an idea of feedback. That's feedback. Can you see it? And what we can see is actually feedback is this really powerful. Can everybody see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so feedback is very easy. It's basically you put the output back into the input, and then you get something that looks a bit fractally and a bit out there. So this is related to cybernetics. So people sell you AI, but the wisdom and insight, and Ben, I know that you'll appreciate this, that they use to sell you the AI is the cybernetics, yeah? So if you want to talk about Bezos and his Amazon's flywheel or anything like that, or like feedback and really self-development, things like that, it's all based on this notion of feedback. So that's like the first point I'd like to make, and I think it's important. And again, the anti-fragility as well is related to feedback. So if I just like slam through these really quickly, and we'll do another show on these. So the first thing I'm going to say is the emergence. We talk about pull forces. Can you see the screen, everybody, just in case?
Yeah.
So we're talking about pull forces. We're talking about up being down, down being up. We're talking about the need for, these are obviously sparrows or swallows doing a murmuration. Really Rosetta Stone of trying, we're beginning to put all these pieces together and get this emergent behavior that Martin talked about, David Dibble talked about last week. We're also moving from more of a, ism to more of a kind of a Taoist type of way of looking at it. So basically Eastern style thinking with its, this is the I Ching here and the Tai Chi. The Eastern thinking modalities are becoming more relevant, and the Western ones to the left are becoming less relevant, which means right is left and left is right. So actually the stuff on the right is actually pushing out the stuff that's on the left. It's coming after it, and this is why we're going to continue to see the Chinese doing really well and such and such. Another thing, we're moving from power to influence, and that's where another archetype that I'm sure Christina and others will appreciate, which is that of the Joker. So the Joker is smarter than the king, but weaker. So their role is to speak truth to power. If anybody's read the short story Hop Frog, it's basically about that. So we're in this speak truth to power moment. So we've got a lot of Emperor's New Clothes. The thing that it is about the jester is that they're influential because they're speaking with authenticity and they're speaking about love. That means, and this is just we should be moving away from extremities. So the 6 and the 9, I'll skip that. But this is maybe all relevant. We're talking about the heart pull, also embracing the dark side and actually bringing out some of these, having the questions, having the conversations we know we need to have. All of these things are about moderation, diversity, weighing things up, translating, being a mediator, somebody's occupying the middle ground. It's important. I'll just skip a few. We need to move between, things like organizations and markets to more networks, and they have a different way of working. Feedback we've already done. We've got things like reinventing organizations. People can look into holacracy and Frederick Laloux. We need to start going back to school again. What did I have on that one? Oh yeah, that's it. So transformation at the end of the day is integrity of purpose, and Afi and I riffed on this theme when I did my that post when we first met. It was about a post about dominating your cultural dojo. And it was all about this statement: transformation is integrity of purpose, and it's really that eats strategy for breakfast. And that's really about trust networking. It's about being more of an integral, and actually rather than what, when, who, is really why, who, how, what. So it's all about who we are. We start with ourselves, and then that means going back to school for many people because they're not used to working. They're used to working in more of a hierarchical paradigm. The measure of what's good and what's not good has changed. So that's really something that obviously is quite traumatic and something we're going to get used to. So, you know, if anybody wants to look up some of this stuff, go onto our website. I posted it in the chat, which is basically www. Well, no, it's actually, don't worry about that. It's growingtheedge.net. And if you go to inspiration there, you'll see this wonderful poem that's part of Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts by George Clinton from Parliament Funkadelic. Genius stuff. Is that the end? Well, not really. It's maybe even just the beginning. So what I'd like to do is really just welcome people to that past future. And also, really, we talked about self-development is very important. So I would say, really, what I would leave you with is that you need to, so now I'm, this is real time, this is live. So why didn't that come up? Okay, just a minute. That's unusual. Okay. Chrome, window, interesting, StreamYard. Oh, there we go. Right, everybody's back. So I need to stop sharing now. Nobody saw those slides. Or did they see the slides? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, great. So what I'd really say is that that's pretty much all we've got time for. If I check on my phone. So I'd like to thank our guests today, which have been Sid, Mandy, and thank you for actually conducting the talks. Andreas, Afi, Ben will get you involved in plenty more of these. It's every week, so you know we'll do we'll do just like a Ben episode if you like. Christina, thank you. Hass, thank you. Ada, thank you very much. Caroline, thank you. I'd like to just say that if anybody wants to go onto Eventbrite, go to our website. The details are there. I've set up a few little things if people want to be back here next week. Next week's topic is going to be about trust and transformation. Very important. I think you'll agree. You can tweet us at Growing the Edge. I'm fairly new to Twitter, so I may not pick it up for a couple of days. I'll get the message. I'll get the OK Boomer thing. So I'd like to thank StreamYard, but most of all, I'd like to thank the people who've been watching, and top tip from StreamYard, I'd like to thank those that are watching it on replay, which is actually going to be the majority of the audience. So I've been your host, Chris Patton, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Goodbye.